Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel. My name's FPL Phillips and it's time for another episode in the Edit vs Algorithm series where I'm going to be taking on the Fantasy Football Fix computer generated team for another game week. If you are new to the series, make sure to subscribe to the channel to follow along, but this is the series where I'm taking on the computer-generated team that puts together its own free hit team, if you like, for one game week alone, and then I put together my own free hit draft, and we see which can score the most points, and overall, for the 38 game weeks of the season, come out on top. So far, I'm doing rather well, and let's have a quick recap then before we get into Game Week 5 of how both teams got on in Game Week 4. And we'll kick things off with how the algorithm side fared, and 78 points seems a pretty respectable points total in a week where it wasn't the massive heights that we have seen at other times in FPL. And a bulk of the points, well, a lot of teams were carried by Erling Haaland, who was captained by both sides. The defence was just a sea of one-pointers from Johnston and Anderson at Crystal Palace, who the algorithm doubled up on. Chilwell and Henry also disappointing as Brentford took on Bournemouth in that fixture. The midfield did have some returns, Mo Salah grabbing 8 points alongside Mbeumo with the same total. Jared Bowen scoring against Luton, of course. Phil Foden on 5 and Saka on 4. Also, not doing too badly. But Visser up front alongside Haaland was another blank in this team, meaning that 78 points, over half of them were scored by the Norwegian himself, which I think can be safe to say was the case for a lot of teams last game week, if we can cast our minds back to before the international break, which I don't know about you guys, but has felt rather long to me. I'm very happy for FPL to be returning this weekend and to have some football to watch that isn't Harry Maguire putting the ball into his own net for England. But yeah, we'll get on to my team and how my team did in comparison. 78 points it was to beat, and I scored 80, meaning that it is now 4-0 to myself over the algorithm in this series. So I've got a very comfortable lead, winning all the game weeks so far, which I'm very pleased about. It was only a 2-point margin in last game week, largely thanks to I did get one return from a defensive asset, so Udogie came through with that one assist. So although my midfield fared a little bit worse, and Antonio up front could only match Visser's 2 points, I did come in with the victory overall, with Erling Haaland still scoring exactly half my points in Game Week 4 with this team. So yeah, not much too impressive really. I had Bowen in there as well, Maddison with 7 points, Sterling was a bit of a letdown. But yeah, I think what you guys are here for, as is the case with most week, is next Game Week 5. What is the computer-generated team looking like? What side is predicted to score the most points by the computer? And what free hit draft am I putting together to take it on for this game week? And I must be getting deja vu in every single video because all I'm seeing are 3-5-2 formations, and it's no surprise really given how many stacked midfield options there are at the moment. You know, we've got pretty poor prospects of clean sheets at the back. 3 defenders just seems the way to go, and then you've just only got to make the decision on whether you go for a third striker or a fifth midfielder. And to be honest, as I mentioned, with there being so many good midfield options, a lot of people are just settling on the 3-5-2, which is a little bit boring to see the same formation over and over again, but it is still looking pretty overpowered this season. In goal then is where we'll start though, where there's always one goalkeeper in an FPL team, and this week for the Algorithm 11 in Game Week 5 it is going to be Leno, who has a Luton at home fixture, probably the best fixture you can have right now in terms of clean sheet prospects. 5.1 predicted points for him, and Leno has been performing really, really well so far this season. I think that even when Fulham do concede a lot of chances, which they do, they have some of the worst expected goals conceded data in the league, as they did with last season, Leno performs really well thanks to the save points and the bonus points as well that he's able to accumulate. Just last season, where, as I mentioned, Fulham had the worst expected goals conceded data in the league, Leno was the 5th highest scoring goalkeeper over the course of the season. So that stands alone as evidence from just 1 year ago, where Leno has proven that even when he's got poor data as a side for Fulham, in terms of how many chances they're conceding, that's where he actually thrives and can do very well as an option. So maybe not even in this game would be the best chance to show that. Maybe Fulham will concede fewer chances. Hopefully Leno's still able to keep out those ones, and then you can grab a clean sheet and maybe some bonus points for him. But he's of course going to fare a little bit better for saves and bonus points in games where Fulham do concede more chances. But there's hopes of a clean sheet in this one for Fulham. In the defence then, we are going to see Udogie, who comes in alongside 2 more surprising picks, Robinson and Aurier. So a Nottingham Forest and another Fulham defender, so doubling up on the prospects of a clean sheet at home to the newly promoted side. I think that Robertson is probably the second best Fulham defensive option you can go for. I think Ream has the best data so far from what I've seen. I had a brief look at Fulham defenders, but to be honest, I'm not considering them myself in the sides. I'm looking more at attacking data. Ream does seem to fare better in that regard, so I would have him ahead of Robinson anyway, but I'm not going to gamble on a Fulham defender personally in my team at the moment. I'm looking for these really, really attacking fullbacks, probably from some bigger sides than Fulham right now, and I just think Leno in goal is by far the best option that you can go for from that Fulham team. Udogie, however, is probably the best Spurs defensive option you can pick, in my view, ahead of Porro and also Romero at centre-back, who has scored 2 goals already this season. So yeah, Udogie, already talked about him in my team selection video yesterday. Fantastic pick. Sheffield United at home, a brilliant fixture that hopefully he might even grab another attacking return in, as well as maybe a clean sheet, which have been hard to come by so far this season. We've also then got Aurier in here, who has performed pretty well in a few games so far this year already. In terms of points, he's done rather well at times. We've seen the odd double-digit haul from him, so he has got that in his locker. At home to Burnley is a pretty nice fixture, and I think that will be a positive sign for a lot of people choosing to start Matt Turner in goal, especially with the news going around that in the camp at Nottingham Forest at the moment, it may be that the new keeper coming in might start ahead of Turner. I think he was number 1 at Benfica or some other team. I don't know, to be honest. I probably should have looked that up before the video. But if Turner is going to start this game week, it's just good for the prospects of a clean sheet for Nottingham Forest in this fixture. You'd be hoping that the computer is choosing to swing that way. In the midfield, then, we've got the midfield 5. It's Mo Salah, Maddison, Gibbs White, Saka, and Heung-min Son. So another Nottingham Forest player coming into the mix here. Burnley do tend to play this quite attacking line, especially maybe at home, but away from home, you would think that maybe Nottingham Forest, if Burnley do still go a little bit more on the offensive, will get chances, and Gibbs White could be definitely one of the main attackers to target from Nottingham Forest. This is purely just looking at it on a 1-week basis, to be honest. I'm not that focused on bringing in Gibbs White into my midfield anyway above some of the likes of the other players in this midfield here, but even the likes of Sterling and Bomo, who don't even get to feature in the midfield this week. So just too many options really to consider Gibbs White in my view, but definitely one that could end up being a decent 1-week punt. We've then got the 2 Spurs boys, who you can't really argue against at the moment, look fantastic. Heung-min Son might not fare quite as well in this game, but it's very hard to back against a Sheffield United at home fixture. I think if they're playing a low block, it might be a little bit more difficult if Son's playing as the number 9, but he's not great from the left wing either. Personally, I think the Liverpool and the Arsenal games coming up next are more Son fixtures where there'll be more space in behind, and that's where he really thrives, running through, using his pace, and getting a finish off on the run. So that's what I like for prospects from Son. I don't think this fixture is way, way better than the next 2 he's got coming up, even though this one's a green one and the next 2 are those scary, angry red fixtures on the fixture ticker. I think that there's prospects for Son to do well in the next game weeks as well, so I'm not necessarily rushing him in just for this fixture based on the fact that, Sheffield United aren't one of the strong sides in the Premier League at the moment, to say the least. And then finally, we've got Bukayo Saka in here. Everton away is a pretty decent fixture this week, in a week where, we have got some midfielders with tougher games, and Bomo going away at Newcastle, who I mentioned earlier. The United boys are up against Brighton, which isn't going to be too much of an easy fixture. However, Brighton's data so far hasn't looked very good defensively, so maybe a little bit surprised you could have squeezed one of them into this team, perhaps. And then finally, we've got Mo Salah. 5.6 projected points for him, so he is behind the likes of Maddison and Son in that regard. But yeah, Wolves away is still a very decent fixture for the Reds. And if you've got the money for him, it's hard to back against Mo Salah. And then finally, up front, we've got Erling Haaland, of course, taking the armband once again. So the algorithm is choosing to go with him over Son and Maddison. And then we've got Awoniyi, so another Nottingham Forest player completing the triple up, and he's the attacker from Forest that I would go for if you are considering one. I just think there aren't as many strong forward options at the moment. There are definitely a few who could become great options. I'm looking at Gabriel Jesus, Darwin Núñez, if he can nail down some game time. Even Nicholas Jackson, I think, could come good. But Awoniyi has just been scoring for fun at the moment. He's been scoring against big teams. He's been scoring against weaker sides. Burnley at home could be another fixture where he does some serious damage. So I really like him as a pick. And 5.3 projected points for him this week. On the bench, if needed, we do have Neto, Jimenez, Cabole, and then also that Burnley player, who I can never get the name of right. We've got Neto as the goalkeeper. Jimenez is an interesting one. Fulham, as we mentioned with Leno and Robinson, at home to Luton is a very nice fixture, one I did briefly consider bringing into my own side. But speaking of my team, this is who I've gone for in my free hit draft this week to take on the algorithm. Let's see if we can make it 5-0, shall we? With this side is what I'm going to be going with. I've gone with the 3-4-3 formation. I've kept Leno in goal. I've gone with a bit of a punt in Zinchenko in my defence. I know it's an away game against Everton where I don't think there's a massive chance of a clean sheet. But I like Zinchenko. I thought his underlying data last season looked pretty promising. And I've also gone for Matty Cash in that regard. Just kind of gone for 3 defenders who look pretty attacking. I'm banking on them. And we've got Ream down there on the bench, who I mentioned is probably my more preferred Fulham defensive pick at the moment. In the midfield, I've gone with the midfield 4, actually, so I have gone with Awoniyi and Haaland up front, but I've brought in Nick Jackson, who I mentioned I still do really like for this fixture against Bournemouth. I've also doubled up with Chelsea, and I've gone with Sterling in the midfield, alongside Salah, Maddison and Son. But the interesting pick that I wanted to talk about a little bit is Pellistri, down there on the bench. I could only squeeze him in at the second sub position, but with the kind of Antony suspension at the moment that we've not heard any more on, I know there's rumours and everything, but I'm not going to comment on that here. Whether Antony is going to be back in the squad anytime soon, it's looking like with Jadon Sancho out of favour. He has deleted that tweet where he was kind of, having a go at Ten Hag, but he's not going to be in the squad, you'd think, for this game week. They're running out of right-wing options, basically, Manchester United. So who's going to play there? I think a lot of people want to see Pellistri start on the right-hand side. And I think the more likely scenario is maybe we see Bruno Fernandes moving out there. That probably seems like what Ten Hag will do and something that he has done at times in his tenure at Manchester United. But Pellistri, as a punt, is one I've put down there on the bench. A mega differential, of course, and only like 4.4 million. So if he becomes an option, that'll be very, very exciting. But yeah, that's going to wrap up my team. I've got 60 predicted points for this game week. If you want to check out what your own projection is for this game week with your side, you can check it out using the Assistant Manager tool. The link to all the tools the Fantasy Football Fix has to offer are down below in the description if you would like to check them out for yourself. Make sure to leave a thumbs up on the video if you did enjoy it, and as I mentioned at the start, if you're new around here, please do consider subscribing. But without further ado, I'll let you get on with the rest of your day. I hope you have a good one, and I hope to catch you in the next video. Goodbye.